um, our bestseller author, Mr. Vikas Swarup's journey, and Mr. Professor Jatindra Kumar Nayak will help us to know about him, I think. So, anyway, I'd like to call on stage Mr. Vikas Swarup and Professor Jatindra Kumar Nayak in conversation with Vikas Swarup. This is your time. In this way, sir, we have changed our roadmap. Thank you very much. This is your time. I think you'll have. Um, I'd like our friend to come and. Uh, who is- ताली बजाइदिनुहोस् प्लिज मलाई अप्ठ्यारोमा नपार्नुहोस् Thank you very much. This is your time. Please have your time, and I go downstairs to hear you. Thank you very much.
So I very warmly welcome you to this session. It's a distinct pleasure and a daunting privilege to engage Ambassador Vikas Swarup in a conversation about his journey as a writer of best-selling novels. But after I interacted with him over the last 2-3 hours, I no longer feel daunted because he has put me at ease. And I was worried about asking him some very obvious questions because he's being asked these questions in every literary festival. So I will ask these obvious questions anyway. But since he's a master storyteller, in fact, he says that story jostle in his mind. So he's a master storyteller, weaves fantastic stories, even when he's responding to very banal and obvious questions. So I would like to begin by asking a very obvious and general question. How did your literary journey begin? Because you have described yourself as a diplomat writer, not a writer diplomat. You wrote during weekends, and diplomacy was your chief profession, and but you also described yourself very finicky writer. So insisted on writing only on weekends, and the rest is history. So please tell us something about your fascinating literary journey as a diplomat writer.
Thank you, Professor Nayak. It's a real pleasure to be at the Kalinga Literary Festival and to be in conversation with you, such an esteemed professor of English literature, who's even taught at Oxford. So it's a real honor for me to be in conversation with you. So you asked about my literary journey. Now, it's the easy thing and the normal thing to say is that my literary journey began when I was 42 years old, and I wrote my first book called Q&A when I was posted in the High Commission of India in London. But that's not the truth, because my literary journey began really when I was 5 or 6 years old. And my grandfather introduced me to the world of books. And I was very fortunate. He was a top advocate of the country. He had a magnificent 10,000 book library, but he was a very eclectic reader. So he did not only have legal tomes in his library, he also had books of fiction. There was Albert Camus, The Outsider. There was Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis. There was Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice. There was Alberto Moravia. There were all kinds of other writers there as well. And it was, one of the advantages that I had growing up in a city called Allahabad in the early 1960s was that we did not have internet, we did not have cable television, we did not have PlayStation, we did not have Netflix, which meant there were no other distractions. You could either watch a film, maybe once or twice a month, or you could read books. There was nothing really else to do. I mean, you could play cricket or volleyball or gulli danda or whatever in the evenings, but by and large, your main pastime was reading books. And that's how my love affair with books started. I got into the habit of reading, and I read copiously. At that time in Allahabad, there used to be a lending library called the Anil Book Depot. And Anil Book Depot used to lend out books, mostly novels by Western authors, for 25 paisa per day. And I would try to finish that novel within that same day so that in 25 paisa, I could get my full paisa vasool, so to speak. So that's how really my literary journey started. In fact, one of the reasons I joined the Foreign Service was because of all the Western writers that I had read. You know, when I read Enid Blyton and they talk about eating a scone, I had never seen a scone and I was curious. I said, what is a scone? You know, and that's how when I read P.G. Woodhouse, he talks about Blanding's Castle, etc. And, you know, these were all very fascinating things for me. And that is why I chose to get a career in the Foreign Service, because at that time, the foreign was exotic. It was not as common as it has become now in the globalized world that we are living in. And that's why I joined the Foreign Service. And once I joined the Foreign Service in 1986, the thought of writing fiction did not cross my mind. I always considered myself to be a reader. I never thought of myself as a writer. It was only when I was posted in London, and this is between 2000 and 2003, that the writing bug sort of bit me. And there were two reasons for that. One was that I was in the city of London itself, which is such a hub for the world of English language publishing. Every week, you would hear a new book being launched, a new writer being feted. So that was a huge inspiration. And the second was, many of my contemporaries in the Indian Foreign Service, they were writing fiction. And when I thought that, when I heard about their books, when I saw their books, I thought to myself, I said, I never imagined this person could be a writer, but he's writing a fiction, he's writing a novel. So do I also have a novel inside me? Can I write a novel? So that's really how it started, as a challenge to myself, that I'm Vikas Swarup, the diplomat, but can I be Vikas Swarup, the writer? And that's when my journey started. And I wrote 4.5 chapters, sent it out to 10 agents, got picked up by one, completed the book, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Yes. I also know some of these diplomat writers personally. For instance, Ambassador Kiran Doshi, his Birds of Passage, and Mr. Jinnah often came to my
That's right. That's
so
right.
India around the freedom struggle. You just mentioned that you occasionally watch films, but I think you are a great lover of Hindi films. And you, as a storyteller, you always loved fast-paced narratives. And one of your favorite films was Sholay. So would you please elaborate on tell us something more about your love for films and
Yes.
how it impacted your...
You see, films are part of the social reality of India. India, let us not forget, is still, a poor country in the sense that, vast majority of Indians are still poor. And for them, the main source of entertainment is Hindi movies. Because for 3 hours, for the payment of, in those good old days, it was 50 rupees, 60 rupees, you could just sit in the theater and forget your cares and just enjoy the spectacle that is unfolding on the screen. And that is why it was called escapist entertainment. That you are escaping into a fantasy world, a world which has no correlation with your actual life. It is a world in which, glamorous film stars and beautiful ladies are romancing in Switzerland and, going to American shopping malls and doing all kinds of things, which you would never actually manage to do in your real life. And that is why, they were called popcorn entertainment and escapist entertainment. So films were a huge influence even on me. Because growing up, as I said, I could read books or I could watch films. They were the only two means of entertainment available to us. And of course, I fell in love with those kinds of films which, as you said, had a gripping narrative, had a clear-cut storyline. I was never, a type that, okay, just because my star is there, I'm going to watch that film. It had to have a good story. And Sholay, I think, had an amazing story, to the extent that people remember, everybody remembers the famous iconic line, "Are o Sambha, Sarkar kitna inam rakhe hamare upar." So those kinds of lines became immortal, so to speak, because it spoke really a new kind of a language. I mean, Salim Javed, and there's just a Netflix documentary has come out about them, how they revolutionized Indian cinema, because in the past, people used to go to a theater because of the strength of the director or of the strength of the leading actor or actress. It was for the first time that people started going to a film because of the writers. that if it's a Salim Javed film, it has to be fantastic. And they gave us some very, very memorable films. Diwar, Sholay, Zanjeer, Trishul, all these are iconic films. So yes, I really enjoyed, watching these films, getting lost in the fairy tale world. But the one big difference between watching a film and writing a book is, in a film, you are almost duty bound to do that willing suspension of disbelief. That when you sit in a theater, something very zany, crazy things are going to happen, which do not happen in real life. You just have to take it for granted. But when you're writing, even if you're writing fiction, fiction has to make sense. The reader will not do the willing suspension of disbelief if he feels that the backdrop you have painted, you're writing about Delhi, and it looks like more like the gateway of India. He will immediately drop that novel. So that is the difference. Films, I think, can provide a good inspiration point, but eventually books have to make sense.
You have described your novels as snapshots of India. And unlike many other contemporary novelists, you don't focus on the past. You write about contemporary India. And you think, or you have stated very often, that India is the most complex nation in the world or country in the world. And in order to capture this complexity, you need many layered narratives. And even while depicting this India, you concentrate on the downtrodden, the poor, the oppressed. Generally speaking, when, say, Arvind Adiga writes about them, they focus on gory violence. But you express an abiding faith in these people, that even if they're violent, even if they're downtrodden, even if they can be mean, but something noble, their resilience fascinates you. So you talked about the Hole in the Wall project, Neat's Hole in the Wall, and that perhaps gave you the idea that even among these hopeless people who lead hopeless lives, there are sparks of nobility and sparks of possibility. So please tell us something about that.
So the inspiration for my first novel, Q&A, which eventually became the film Slumdog Millionaire, was from a project called The Hole in the Wall. Has anybody here heard of the project Hole in the Wall? Okay, I'll tell you about this project. So this project was started by a group of computer scientists at the National Institute of Information Technology in Delhi. There was the big NIIT, gleaming campus of NIIT, and right next to that campus was the sprawling Kalkaji slum. It was literally a slum. Poor people used to live in that slum in shanty, makeshift huts, etc. And there was a common wall dividing the campus from the slum. So this side is the campus of the NIIT, and just after the campus is the slum. So these scientists, what they did was, in that common wall, they created a circular hole. And then they put a computer with a touch screen facing the slum. So there was a computer, there was a touch screen, there was a mouse. And it is facing towards the slum. And then they just had a camera and they just said, let's observe what's going to happen. And can you imagine what happened? Within 3 months, children living in that slum started using that computer. So when I first heard about it, I said, this is crazy, this is impossible. These are slum kids. These are kids who have never gone to school, who do not know what information technology is, who have never seen a computer in their life. And they are using a computer without the help of any teacher. And this is called experiential learning. That just by observation, trial and error, you can imbibe things. So when I read about this project, Hole in the Wall, and I said, if a slum kid can start using a computer, then it means that already the spark isn't there in the slum kid. We think a slum kid cannot use a computer because we never have given them a computer. But give them a computer and they will start using it. Because, everybody is blessed with the same amount of brain cells. It's just that some have that opportunity to develop those brain cells and others do not get that opportunity. So I thought to myself, if a slum kid can use a computer, then a slum kid can also participate in a brain quiz and win. And that's how Q&A was born.
Thank you. Whoever has read your fiction has been mesmerized by its vividly detailed descriptions of characters, landscapes, situations, and so they are visually compelling. You read a work of fiction written by Ambassador Swarup, you can visualize the whole world, smell, the sights, everything. But at the same time, in one of your interviews, you said You are worried about images overtaking the word because you think images colonize the mind, that we shouldn't allow that to happen. And you gave a very fascinating examples from Harry Potter and all that. I want you to share your views on this fascinating subject with a young uh,
Yes, you see,
friends here.
that is the real problem in our 21st century world, that the image has overpowered the word. When I tell my kids, okay, you don't want to read, Thomas Hardy, at least read Harry Potter. And what do the kids say? Pa, I'll wait for the film to come out. Because they know Harry Potter will be made into a film, and then why waste my time reading a 400-page novel? I will watch the film in 1.5, 2 hours, I'll get the whole story. But that is the problem. Because you see, when you read, then two things happen. You read the words on the page, and then you visualize that image in your head. So there's a two-way transmission. And when you are reading, you can put yourself in that visualization. So the example of Harry Potter I gave was that when a little kid is reading Harry Potter, then that little kid can see himself as Harry Potter, maybe with glasses, but still it is yourself. You are visualizing yourself in the shoes of Harry Potter. But when that film comes out, Daniel Radcliffe is Harry Potter. You cannot be Harry Potter because Daniel Radcliffe is in your face. He leaves no scope for you to visualize yourself. And that is why the television is called the idiot box, because it is just beaming to you one-way communication. You don't have any agency of your own. You are just passive, consumers or downloaders of that information. You have no activity. You have no creative potential in that. Whereas in a book, you are the creator. You are creating those images in your head. And that is why a book will always be much more superior to a film or to a TV series.
Yeah. Mr. Swarup has just published, I think, 2024, Girl with Seven Lives.
Yes,
was
it came out on the
published
15th of July.
Yes. So,
The Girl with the Seven Lives.
and it's an unput downable novel. If you just begin reading it, you can't just put it down. So this is also influenced by, I think Ambassador Swarup has also acknowledged it, the influence of 1001 Nights, the Arabian Nights, that you tell a story, and on being able to tell that story depends on your life. Your life depends on your being able to spin that narrative. So in this book, in this very fascinating novel, there is a chapter, How to Write a Bestseller. And one of the reviewers said that, well, this is where the novel turns meta, that he is reflecting upon, because Mr. Swarup is the writer of a best-selling, 3 or 4 best-selling novels. So what does he do here? By including a chapter titled How to Write a Bestseller, is he parodying his own experience of producing so many bestsellers? Is he doing something else? So I was a little intrigued, because that's one of the most gripping chapters in the narrative, with a, I think, absolutely unpredictable end. So please, let's hear your thoughts about this very interesting chapter.
Yes, so basically, as you rightly said, in a way, I'm, making fun of myself, so to speak. So in that book of mine, the new book that has come out, The Girl with the Seven Lives. So basically, first, let me talk about what is this Girl with the Seven Lives. So this is the life story of a young girl called Devi. Devi is 25 years old. She works in a beauty parlor in Mumbai. And one evening, as she's coming out of the beauty parlor, she's kidnapped by a group of people. She's herded into a minivan, and then she's injected with something. When she wakes up, she finds herself in a dingy basement, sitting across a man who has a mask on his face and a gun in his hands. And he's asking her to tell her entire life story, what all happened to her till the age of 25. And he's accusing her of committing a large number of crimes, including murder. And he says, you have to confess to all those crimes. You have to tell me why you did those crimes, what made you what you are today. So over the course of one night, she narrates the stories of her life. How from Devi, she became Deepa. From Deepa, she became Diba, a Muslim. From Diba, she became Dasmeet, a Punjabi. From Dasmeet, she became Deepthi, a Keralite. From Deepthi, she became Diana, a Christian. And from Diana, she became Dolly in Mumbai. So these are her 7 lives. And the whole story unfolds over a period of one night. And that's why the touch of Arabian Nights, because in Arabian Nights, Scheherazade, who has been married to the king, and the king is very fond of chopping off the head of his new wife every night. And that is why she creates this long running story where just before the story is ending, the night is also going to end and the story is at a cliffhanger. So the king wants to listen to what happens in the story, and he does not kill her that night. He waits for the next night, and next night she again narrates another story, but leaves him on a cliffhanger. And this goes on for 1001 nights. And that's how she escapes. So similarly here, the stakes are very high. Devi is likely to be shot dead by this masked gunman unless she narrates all the stories of her life. So two things are going on. She's narrating the stories of her life, and she's also trying to get out of that situation. So one of the chapters that she's talking about is when she becomes Deepa. And what happens to her is she was living in a slum, and a photographer comes one day and she has a dog with her called Sheru. And she and the dog, and just because she's sitting with the dog one day, some lady comes and drops 5 rupees in her pocket. And even though she's not a beggar, and she says, wow, this is fantastic. Just by sitting with the dog, I can get some money. So she starts sitting with the dog, and the dog is very lovely. He's a German Shepherd. And lots of people keep coming and giving her money. And she's making a lot of money. And that's why one reporter is fascinated. And she says, I want to do a story on you and your dog, because it's the first time I'm seeing a beggar girl with a dog. So she does a story on this girl and the dog. The story appears. And a very rich banker called Devika Oberoi, she reads the story. And Devika Oberoi is a banker, but secretly she wants to be a best-selling author. She wants to write the next Slumdog Millionaire. And her problem is, as a banker, she has no experience of going to a slum. She cannot be seen in a slum. She will lose her job the next day if people say, what is this banker doing in a slum? So she is looking for someone who can inspire her. And she comes across this girl's photograph in the newspaper, and she finds her at the traffic intersection, and she says, come, I want to adopt you, and you will come and live in my house. So that's how Deepa, I mean, her name is Devi, but she names him Deepa because the heroine of her story is called Deepa. And Devi starts living in her house as Deepa. And she's trying to mine Devi's experience of living in a slum, of actually being a slum dweller, to find out what is the DNA of poverty. And the play I'm trying to make is, what is the scent of authenticity? Can you just mine somebody's experience and make it your own and publish it under yourself? Or it has to be a lived, authentic experience. So that is the play, because technically speaking, I never went to Dharavi when I wrote about Dharavi in Q&A. So I am also poking fun at myself that where is that sense of authenticity? And that is why I always say research is very important to create that authentic backdrop.
Now I would like to bask in your reflected glory for 2 seconds. I think I'll ask you a question which no one has put to you.
This is quite something.
I'll be very disappointed if I've already faced this question.
Okay.
Then my chance to become famous for 2.5 split seconds will be gone. So one of the characters in the last, I think, episode, when she dupes and blackmails an Odia.
Yes, she blackmails an Odia.
His name is Samir Sahu.
Samir Sahu.
He calls himself a cool cook.
Cool cook, yes.
And she dupes and blackmails him. So I was pleasantly shocked that to find an Odia there. So how and where did you find him? And I suddenly discovered that you have a very profound connection with Odisha through your great-grandfather.
Yes, that's right. Because my great-grandfather excavated the Sun Temple in Konark.
Yeah, so this is another connection which we would very much like to explore. Where and how you found this?
So basically, I wanted to come to Kathmandu for the Kalinga Literary Festival. And I said, Rashmi will only invite me if I put some Odia connection in my novel. So I created this Odia character called Samir Sahu.
You must have known somebody, some Odia.
No, basically, for me, it looked interesting. I mean, just the fact, I think Bengalis have been done to the death.
Yes.
That's why I said Odia characters have not really been that prominent in, in Indian writing in English. And that's why, for me, Odia was, having an Odia character was much more fascinating than having a run-of-the-mill UP or Bengali or whatever. That was one of the reasons.
I hope no one has asked you this question.
No, this, you get your 15 minutes of it. Yes, I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
So maybe this is the last question, and if we are permitted,
yes, we'll open it up to the audience.
God, we'll take questions from the audience. I think you describe your thrillers as social thrillers, where you combine, because you don't believe in whodunits,
Yes.
which are plot driven.
Yes.
Where once you find
Correct.
who
Once the
has
plot is
committed
revealed,
the
it's all
murder,
over.
you forget it.
Correct.
So how do you combine social critique with the structure, the essential structure of a thriller?
Yes.
What challenges?
Yes. So
does
that
this
is the real challenge, because writing an airport thriller is very easy. An airport thriller is entirely driven by the plot. Los Angeles is about to be nuked, and the hero is racing against time to prevent the nuclear blast from being triggered. But once you find out that the nuclear blast is not triggered, the hero succeeds in defusing the bomb. That's the end of the novel. You throw it away because the characters don't remain with you. It is all the plot. The furious pace of the novel is entirely about the plot. And for you, the obsession is, oh my God, can Los Angeles be saved or not? But once Los Angeles is saved, the plot is over, the novel is thrown away, nothing remains with you even 30 seconds after the plot is over. But I want to write novels in which the characters resonate with you even after you have turned the last page. You are still reflecting on them, trying to find out what happened to them, where did destiny take them next? And for that, two things are important. One, those characters have to be fully fleshed out people so that you can identify with them, you can sympathize with them, you can empathize with them. That is one. And secondly, the backdrop against which these characters operate has to feel real. And that is why I do a lot of research and I bring in a lot of social commentary, in the sense which is organic. Because in India, whatever you do has to be against a certain social backdrop. You're either Hindu or you're Muslim or you're Sikh or you're Christian. There's some caste stratification. There is some gender stratification. There are all kinds of stratifications happening. So these things come very organically. I don't have to go very deep to just find them. I mean, in the first book, I wrote about Bedia tribal girls who are sold into prostitution by the members of their own family. Can you imagine? And that is something that has actually happened. So similarly, in this latest novel, The Girl with the Seven Lives, I touch upon what happens in juvenile homes for girls. I touch upon what happens in hospitals, private hospitals, how they fleece patients by prescribing all kinds of tests which are not really needed at all, which is something happens in every country. I'm sure in Nepal also, government hospitals and private hospitals, there's a huge difference in terms of how many tests are needed, etc. Similarly, as I said, I write about other stuff as well, which I think if you read the book, you will try to find out.
I think the main character, the name of the main character in Q&A was Ram Thomas. And
Ram Muhammad Thomas. In the film, he's called the unidimensional Jamal Malik.
Yeah. So,
but in the book, he's called Ram Muhammad Thomas. And I chose that for a reason. You see, in India, the moment you tell your name, you reveal so many things about yourself. The moment you say, I'm Avdesh Prasad Mishra, I know 4 things about you. I know you are a Hindu. I know you are a Brahmin. I know you are probably from North India, maybe UP or Bihar or MP. And most likely you are a vegetarian. So 4 things I know about you even without meeting you at all, just by your name. And I wanted my hero to represent all of India. So if he had a name like Avdesh Prasad Mishra, he cannot represent all of India. He is representing Brahmins from North India only. And that's why I gave him this name, Ram Muhammad Thomas.
And
now you don't know. Is he Hindu? Is he Muslim? Is he Christian? Is he from the North? Is he from the South? He is, in a sense, a microcosm of India. He can represent each and every street kid because, he is not particularized.
And he could always reinvent himself,
and
depending on the
yes,
circumstances.
the leitmotif of that novel was how he responds to different situations by using the elements of his name. So when he's working with a Hindu actress, he becomes Ram. When he's with his friend Muhammad, when he's with his friend Salim, he becomes Muhammad. When he's working with an Australian diplomat, he becomes Thomas.
So I don't want to monopolize the task of asking questions to Ambassador Swarup. Now the floor is open and I invite questions from members of the audience, and I'm sure.
Especially the budding writers themselves, because I always say, I never had English literature as my subject. I never went to a creative writing workshop. If I can write, you can write.
Questions, please. I'm sure questions are arising in your mind.
Okay, one, Professor Dash. There's a mic.
Did you write this book, the recent book, keeping in mind that there might be a cinema being made or the story can be
Yeah, many
created?
people ask me this question, that when you are writing, are you already thinking of a web series or a film? And my answer is no. Of course, the thought does cross my mind that one day this could be, because all three of my previous novels, two have already been made, and the third one is going to be made into a film, The Accidental Apprentice. So the thought does cross my mind, but that does not influence the choices I make while writing. I am writing a novel. I am not writing a screenplay. So I do not decide, oh, tomorrow this will be a screenplay, so let's put in this, let's put in that, because then it will neither be a good novel, neither will it be a good screenplay.
Just a
You
related.
have to write what
Yeah.
you write, what you know best. I know best how to write a novel. And if film people want to convert it into a film, then that's their lookout. Something will be gained, but something will be lost in that process. And that is a part of the deal.
A short related question. You said that I write so that people who are readers can remember the characters, perhaps sympathize, not
Yes.
that, okay, the plot is over, the book is over.
Correct.
So does that come from the Indian sensibility of reincarnation and everything comes back, it goes back? But
No, I mean, the 7 lives is not she's not reincarnated in new avatars.
I'm
She's
saying the sensibility from there.
Yes, I'm tapping into that whole, the girl with the dragon tattoo kind of a dynamic as well,
Jana, yeah.
by using that title. But really, the leitmotif of this novel is resilience and reinvention. And the world we are living in, everybody is reinventing themselves constantly. But the reinvention basically means that, especially if you're in the IT industry, today you are working with Cognizant, tomorrow you're working with Wipro, third day you are working with TCS. Your resume keeps getting bulkier and bulkier because you're adding new things. But in her case, she has to start from scratch because the police are after her. So she cannot even use any element of her previous identity. She has to completely give up that old identity and acquire a totally new identity. That is the difference.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm also a diplomat working at the
Oh,
Foreign
wow.
Affairs.
Congratulations. Fellow tribes member.
That's why I'm to ask some questions also related to like in this field. Like
Mike, bring a mic closer.
previously you mentioned that the Slumdog Millionaire was inspired by
The hole in the wall.
case. Yeah.
Yes.
Did it have also connection with the Charles Ingram case of the?
Of course,
UK.
because I was living in London when I wrote this book, and there was this huge controversy about Major Charles Ingram. So those of you who have not heard about Major Charles Ingram, he appeared on the British edition of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and he answered all 12 questions correctly, and he won £1 million. He was given £1 million, but the producers suspected that something was not quite right about his performance. So they reviewed the tapes, and then they discovered that on the questions on which he was answering instantly, there was no problem. But on the questions on which he was stumbling, he did not know the answer immediately. Somebody in the audience was coughing. And then they discovered that when the answer was B, there would be 2 coughs. When the answer was C, there would be 3 coughs. When the answer was A, there would be 1 cough. And that's when they discovered that one of the people who were coughing, one was his wife, and one was a professor from Cambridge who was his friend. And all 3 of them had cooked up this conspiracy. We will all do 1/3 of the syllabus each. So obviously the money was taken away from him and he received a 2-year jail sentence. So Major Charles Ingram, what the thought that crossed my mind was, I said, this is a major in the British Army, somebody of a very respectable position, and he can be suspected of cheating. Then why not have a contestant who would definitely be accused of cheating? Because, 18-year-old waiter who has never gone to school, when he answers all the questions, nobody can believe it. And they will definitely suspect that, something is wrong about this.
And what made you start writing during initial days, like at first, when you were a diplomat?
No, so as I said, as a diplomat, I was sending my political dispatches and things like that, as all diplomats do. The thought of writing fiction did not occur to me. It was only, I think I was inspired by the city of London, where I was posted between 2000 and 2003. That's when it struck me that I said, if I have to write, then I should write in London. Because previous to that, I was in Addis Ababa. And in Addis Ababa, there was no question of English literature or anything like that at all. So I think it was the fact of being in the city of London that motivated me, and the fact that many of my friends in the Foreign Service were also writing.
And how do you imagine new settings or plot? Do you sit on your writing table and keep going on, like imagining the plot and left,
Yeah,
right.
so for me, fiction is like the Windows advertisement. I don't know if any of you, especially the youngsters, remember the old Windows advertisement. The tagline was, it used to have the Windows logo, and below that, one line, where do you want to go today? That was the Windows advertisement. Where do you want to go today? And for me, that is fiction. The freedom that you can go wherever. I can go to Ecuador. I can go to Colombia. I can go to Jakarta. I can write about any city that I want, even though I have never been there, provided I create an authentic backdrop. I do a research about Colombians or Ecuadorians or Indonesians. I mean, nothing stops me. That's the beauty of fiction. I can create a world even where the laws of physics do not operate. Magical realism, for instance. Cats can be falling from the sky. Monkeys can be speaking. So that's what I love about fiction, that it allows me to go where. All 4 of my novels so far have been written only about India. But who knows? Kathmandu is enormously inspiring. I might write a next novel with characters from Nepal.
And as a diplomat, your advice to me to enter into the world of writing.
No, I think follow your passion. I think that's very important, because you see, when you are in a regular day job, it's a very unidimensional thing. A doctor is just a doctor, a diplomat is just a diplomat, a teacher is just a teacher. But we are all many other things. A diplomat can also be a father, a diplomat can also be a poet, a diplomat can be a musician, a diplomat could be many other things. So it's important that we explore those other facets of our life, because the service should not be everything. It is an important chunk of our life, but as people say, we have a left brain and we have a right brain, and the left brain is supposed to be logical thinking, and the right brain is supposed to be critical thinking, creative thinking. And I think we must utilize that creativity, especially because the kind of tools that are available to us now. Anyone can be a published writer now. You can go straight to Amazon, get the 70-30 deal, and get published. When I wrote it in 2003, the publishing world was a very tightly controlled world. You had to go through an agent, you had to go through a publisher, and otherwise, even if your work was good, if nobody recognized it, it would not be published. So those barriers are gone now. We are living in the greatest era of inspiration and innovation in human history. So everybody has a voice now. Find your voice and write that story that only you can write.
And just to add to your point, that you mentioned that your great grandfather was an archaeologist. I am also
He was a chief engineer. He was the first Indian to rise to the rank of chief engineer. Before that, it was only British people who were chief engineers.
Just to add that I am also a student of archaeology.
Right.
So
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you all. Professor Jatindra Kumar has another session on the next hall. That's why I'd like to take one more minute. I'd like to call my friends on the stage to appreciate Professor Jatindra Kumar Nayak. I'd like to request our Vikas Swarup sir to appreciate our Jatindra Kumar sir with letter of appreciation. So he has another session and everybody is waiting there. Everybody are waiting there. So we just okay, हामीसँग अब यस लगतै अर्को एउटा सेसन छ. Thank you very much sir. Thank you so much. You can buy his book on the book stall. If you want to buy, you can buy, and he will be there to sign your book. अब हामीसँग लगतै अर्को सेसन छ. यस सेसनमा पनि हामी यस्तै कुराहरू गर्दैछौँ. अर्को सेसनको